Greetings viewers, EricTheCarGuy here, and I have a humdinger of a video for you today. Yes, it's epic in length, epic in scope. For those of you that have been following along, this is part of my VCM series, the Honda VCM series that I'm doing. I will link that video down in the description. This is also the second part, or the reassembly of the engine on the 2012 Honda Pilot. In a previous video, I took everything apart and we inspected and cleaned the pistons, and we pick up where we reassemble the pistons and put the engine back together and get it going. It took me a bit longer to produce this video than I originally anticipated. This footage was actually gathered and shot over about 3 months. It took me a bit to get the money for the parts because this was over $2,500 in parts. And speaking of parts, we'll talk about that at the end of the video. But here's a couple of notes that I want to pass on to you before you watch. Number one, as I mentioned, I shot this over several days, so I may repeat myself a couple of times for a couple of things, so forgive me for that. Also, I was using a newer camera that was acting a little wonky that I didn't find out about until after the fact when I went to edit, so some of the shots aren't exactly what I had hoped for, so apologies for that. I also lose my cool more than once in this video, and that's not something I've really shown previously, but it does happen. I left it in this video for a couple of reasons. One, because I think it's relatable, but two, I actually found it kind of funny, and I'm hoping you do as well, so there's that. Additionally, there is a mistake I made during the reassembly that I left in the video. I correct it later in the video, but as you're watching, see if you can find that spot where I messed up. I know it's a long video, so I broke it up with chapter markers. That's all down in the description, so if you just want to jump to the spots that are important to you, I set that up for you. I'm done talking. I think we should get to the action right now with reassembling the engine in the 2012 Honda Pilot. We're going to start here. All the pistons have been cleaned. I covered that in a separate video that I will link in the description. These are the piston ring sets. There's the part number for them. You will need 6 of them. You may remember in the previous video where I cheesed up one of the bearings there it is there. I have some new bearings to install. I've already gone and cleaned the the area where the oil pan attaches to the engine block. So that has all been cleaned up. I used a plastic razor blade for that, which is awesome for cleaning up, aluminum gasket surfaces. I'm not worried about damaging that aluminum with plastic at all. It's freaking awesome. I also used a little pick to dig out the stuff, the Honda Bond that was in the threaded holes, and finished that up with a brush, wiped it down with a rag, and then finally with a shop towel, a clean shop towel. So everything down there should be ready. This has been sitting for a while, and I knew it would be sitting for a while. So I took this garbage bag and I put it over the top of the engine so the dust and debris just didn't filter down into it while I was working on other stuff in the shop. If you find yourself in a similar situation, I suggest you do the same because dirt is your enemy with all this. We want to stay as clean as possible. One more thing when it comes to cleanliness and keeping the shop clean, it is a gorgeous day outside, and I would love to have my shop doors open, but because of I don't want dirt or anything blowing up into this engine, I'm not going to do that. So resist the temptation to invite dirt into your work area while you're doing assembly. After taking the plastic off, I can see that there were some areas that a little bit of corrosion happened. This sat for a little bit longer than I had hoped, but I just think I'm going to go in and maybe do a little housekeeping here before I start installing pistons. That way I can get some of this other stuff cleaned up and everything before reassembly. I finished with a WD-40 like wash and wipe with all these. We're going to do this one piston at a time. Just one final inspection and look over everything, because once it goes in the hole, it's not coming back out. Well, hopefully it's not coming back out, especially anytime soon. I think we're ready. I'm going to start with my oil control rings and one last inspection of those holes. I think we're good. I mean, I've gone over those things so many times and cleaned those things out, but that was our main issue. We wanted to make sure that we cleaned out those oil return holes. There's also these little notches here that some of you may have noticed that I believe also come into play in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to start with the center oil control ring. And that guy nestled all down into its home. I don't think there's a top and the bottom to these. Now, we'll take one of the other rings for the oil control. I'm going to start with the bottom one and just kind of roll it on. That's what I'm looking to do. That's the bottom one on. When you do roll these rings on like this, there are ring expanders that you can just spread the rings out and pop them on. There are things to do that with. In fact, I even think I have one somewhere. Just when you roll them on, just be careful not to scratch the piston top if you can avoid it. But there are the oil control rings, and I'm going to try to space out the gaps at 180 degrees apart. So I'm not so concerned about the center part because that's really one just continuous wavy piece. But I'm just going to try and take the oil control ring end gaps and just sort of stagger them. There's one there. More than anything with those gaps, I'm going to try to avoid getting them around where the holes are. There are 2 more rings to install, 2 compression rings. I'm hoping that they're marked. And this one you might see, there is a 2R marked there. Hopefully you can see that. So that one's marked 2R. I'm going to say that one's probably the second ring. And this one is marked 1R. So that's the top ring. And if you can't see marks, it seems like the lower ring is much wider than the upper ring. So we're going to install that ring next. And just gently lowering it in there. And there we go. Second ring installed. So my numbers and markings are on toward the top of the piston. Boop. This compression ring is here. This compression ring is 180 degrees on the other side. That's how I am installing them. There is a completely assembled piston. Now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the line and I'm going to install all the rings on all the pistons and get them to this configuration and get them ready for bearings and everything else. All of those piston rings have been installed. I'm going to start with number 6 and work my way towards the front. And I'm going to start by installing the bearing that was in the top half here. Now looking through these bearings, they are color coded. Honda bearings are color coded, and I hope you can see that that is a green bearing. There's a green line right there and on the top of that bearing. Now I've found that they mix bearings, and the most common one I think is green, and the second one might be yellow, but I think there's 5 different colors of bearing, and they all correspond to a certain over or under size. Now you'll probably see right in there, there's a little bit of a witness mark from where the bearing was before. And I want to try to get the top and the bottom halves back exactly where they were. I know the bearing goes in a certain way, but if I look at the back sides of those bearings, I think that witness mark on this bearing looks like it might match up to this a little bit better. You see how that top face there is very similar? I think that goes there, and I think this one goes in here. When you install bearings, there's a little notch on one side, no notch on the other. There's notches on the bearing. See where notches on the bearing are? And then no notches on the other side. Match the notches up. And when you put them in, sort of roll them in like this so that they can fit down into their notch. So I might hold this side and just push the other side down into its notch until it all fits together like that. So work carefully, methodically, and then match notch to notch. What I'm going to do before this goes down into the vehicle is I'm going to use some assembly lube, which if you're wondering what this is 20W50 racing oil with lots of zinc in it. That's my assembly lube. And I'm going to lubricate the wrist pin. And I like using this because it's really sticky and gooey. So my wrist pin is lubricated. I'm also going to come in and be generous with the bearing as well. See how that really thick racing oil just sort of stays put? That's what I want. Look at that. Nice like honey. All ready for installation. I'm also going to take some oil around the top of this whole piston. I'm just basically going to, I don't want to say soak, but I'm going to coat the piston in a little bit of assembly lube. What I've also done, and actually this might be quicker and easier and get down into more places, WD-40, man. It's really good for this kind of stuff. So my engine builder uses WD-40 as an assembly lube. Okay, I'm gonna try to stagger my gaps. Make sure those are nice and far apart. Make sure that they're all nice and coated and ready for installation. So my bearing has a coat of oil on it. My piston has a coat of WD-40 on it. My piston rings are all lubed up and ready. We'll put a little bit of assembly lube down in there, that oil control ring, just to give it a head start. To help lubricate that cylinder wall when it first starts out. Yeah, look at that. I'm gonna say that piston is ready for assembly. I'm gonna use this for a ring compressor for this, since I don't have one that's sized directly to it. But the way this works, it's got this ratchet mechanism that you tighten down, and this goes around the outside of the piston, holds the rings in place so that you can knock it down into the cylinder. I'm gonna install this on the piston and get it ready to install into the engine. Before we take this guy over to the engine, and the sticker is at the top of this tool. It actually has some indentations at the bottom to help get the rings to seat down in. But I have gone and cleaned this out. This sat in a drawer for a really long time, was covered with dust. This is all cleaned, and I went through just with a coat of some WD-40. Now I'll take it and put it around the outside of this piston. There's a tool. The idea is to make it so that the rings can still go down through there, but the piston skirt is sticking out ever so slightly. So that way that can sit in the top of the cylinder while you tap the top of this with the back of a hammer to get it to sit down in there. Now, I hope you can see that arrow up there at the top. That's got to face the front of the engine. So that'll help you orientate this when you install it in the engine. So make sure the arrow points towards the front of the engine. Okay, we're going for number 6 here. A little bit of our assembly lube inside of that cylinder for good measure. Make sure we have our arrow lined up. Oh, and by the way, these are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm installing, hopefully it's obvious, cylinder number 6. It's facing the right direction and everything. I'm going to go underneath and make sure that it's going to mate up with the crank journal when I knock it down through, because the last thing I want to do is damage the crank journal. Looks like we're headed down in where we need to be. So as long as that gets down in there, we don't go too far. So I've made sure that the journal is all the way down in its lowest position. And I'm just trying to miss the counterweights as I'm coming in. Make sure that tool is snug. One more click, just for good measure. Try to be decisive. Like that. Make sure that we have assembly lube on our bearing. You can probably see that I just about nailed it. Maybe pull that down just a little bit more. I'm gonna need 2 hands to do it, but that's the goal now, is to mate those 2 things up. This will only go together one way, just like that. It's able to match up the seam. Oh! I'm not intent on torquing these down yet. I'm just gonna snug them all down, and then I'm gonna torque them all down at the same time. So this is just hand tightening. Cool feature this gun has. So that will allow the journal and everything to rotate, and the piston and all that kind of stuff while we do our work. You might see that I have put a ratchet on the front of the engine so that I can rotate it. And we're going to come down to the next cylinder, which looks like number 3 in the back here. So we'll bring the engine around. Rotates super easy, by the way. Okay, so there's our journal for number 3. I've also started a new part of the procedure. I hope you can see there. I put an arrow on the bottom of the connecting rod cap. And that is pointing towards the front of the engine so that I know which way the cap goes on, so I don't have to get confused when I put it on and have to like eyeball it and make sure it's perfect. That might help you. This will be number 2. Cylinder number 5 now. If it stops, stop. You gotta start over. If I remember right, I didn't give that a couple of extra turns. Just start the tool all over again. It'll be fine. So that I do not forget. We are working on cylinder number 1 now. I also changed out my cardboard underneath. I didn't want to get my really good refrigerator piece of cardboard all cheesed up with oil and stuff. Last one, gonna be number 4. Since I'm changing the bearing on this one, I'm being stupidly optimistic and leaving the rings and everything on, but I'm gonna check it with some plasti gauge. Get my plasti gauge down in here. These start at 15 pound-feet. Now I need to do 90 degrees. So I need to reset my torque wrench to do angles. And I'll be right back. But I got to do 90 degrees on each one of these after doing the 15. Hopefully I did this right. Never done it before. That should be torqued. So now we remove it. Let us go look at our squish. And what we're looking for is 0.0015 to 0.0025. It's somewhere in between. And I would say that that is somewhere in between. So I'm good with this. I'm gonna lube it up, install it, and then we'll get all those connecting rod bolts torqued. Very much hope that I set my torque wrench correctly. So 15 foot-pounds. Now we need to change our mode. It's all calibrated. Should be 90 degrees. That's 90. You can't go back and recheck them. It's just like, okay, there it is. I'm learning new things about my torque wrench today. It's always good to know how to use your tools, like every function. I don't love setting things to angles, but this setting on the torque wrench is helpful. Well, that's all the connecting rods installed. Or all the pistons, I should say. I guess we just got to put the rest of the engine back together, right? I'm going to start with the oil pan and the windage tray and everything with this so that I can get the bottom end of the engine buttoned up. That will make it so that the oil stops dripping on the floor. That would be great. I do intend to strip the valve covers down of all the rubber and everything. I think these are an ideal candidate for the ultrasonic cleaner, so those are going to go in there, both of those. As far as the cylinder heads, obviously this one doesn't need really any cleaning other than the exterior a little bit, but this front cylinder head needs, well, some work, I think. And I also wanted to change this valve. I figured doing that while it's out of the vehicle, also getting these converters off and all that stuff. This is all kind of boring, like worky kind of stuff. It seems like it would be more suited to a time lapse, which is the direction that I'm heading here. So I'm gonna work on cleaning all these parts, getting everything ready for reassembly, and then we will check back in with live action Eric, and we'll talk about our progress and where things are at that time. How about that? Welcome back, viewers. Here's a progress report. The second valve cover is in the ultrasonic cleaner and getting the, well, I'm gonna call it the PCV system cleared out. In a previous video, viewers had suggested I use Pine Sol instead of the cleaner that I was using. It's working excellent. Not doing anything to the aluminum, although I wonder, I almost think that these valve covers are magnesium. I don't remember. I bumped the temperature up to 50, and I don't know if that's helping or what, but the ultrasonic cleaner is working awesome, especially on these valve covers. Really happy with how they've turned out. In fact, let's go look at the other one. Here's the other valve cover, the back valve cover. Look at that. Look how clean that is. I'm very pleased with that result. So hit it with compressed air, blew up all the chunks, then I sprayed it all with prep spray. And now I'm letting that prep spray evaporate in the sun, and I'm about to do some of the VHT engine paint. But I figured I'd throw a coat of paint on both the valve covers just to make it nice. It kind of did wonders for the oil pan too, although you might see the lines. I avoided, well, I didn't want to take the crank sensor out. I could have, but I didn't think I had an O-ring for it, so I wasn't going to risk that. It wasn't leaking at all, so I wanted to leave it alone. I put it in the ultrasonic cleaner in such a way to where it never came in contact with that, but everything else is cleaned up nicely. So the plan is to get the valve cover painted outside, get this windage tray and pickup and oil pan and all that stuff installed. That way I don't have to worry about that leakage anymore. I'm going to be using anaerobic sealer instead of Honda Bond here. I prefer it on machine surfaces because there's easy cleanup later if you ever have to take it apart again. Not that I'm being pessimistic, I'm just, well, I just like this better. Try to remove any oil that's trying to sneak out on the mating surface. That guy's got to be clean. Bring in that pan. There are longer fasteners and shorter fasteners. None of them need to be coated with any kind of Honda Bond or any of that kind of stuff. Remember, this sealant doesn't cure until there's no oxygen. So you got tons of working time. I'll put the torque spec on the screen. I'm doing these oil pump or oil pan bolts about a half turn past tight. Notice also I'm using a 1/4 inch tool. That should help you hopefully not break fasteners. Okay, 1/4 turn past snug. That's what I'm doing these. Got oil pans installed. No more drippy stuff on the floor. So this sealant can also just be wiped off. And the reason I'm doing this up here is because I still have to install the timing cover and all that other junk. And I don't want to be covered in sticky red goo. No more sticky red goo. All right, we're not completely done with the oil pan yet. There is this bracket over this crank sensor, which alarmingly does not want to stay plugged in. I love drivers, by the way. This little cover here is just for torque converter bolts so that you can access them. So if you're removing the engine or transmission, you remove this, rotate the crankshaft around, remove, I believe there are 8 torque converter bolts that are 10 millimeter. And I should have waited for this because this is right in the way of one of the bolts I was putting in, or meant to put in. Why didn't you say something? I mean, would have been nice instead of letting me put the whole thing in. Now you want to fight to get unplugged. Now we can do that connector. Now I believe we can say that the oil pan is installed, I think. What's next for me is what's in this box. Yeah, that part number right there. That part number represents all 4 engine mounts for this vehicle. Without the cylinder heads on here, there's no better time to replace these mounts because they're going to be way easier to get to. And then starting with taking all this stuff out from under here and preparing the area so that I can get a floor jack under the engine now with the oil pan on. That's going to be no big deal. I had a thought before I got started on engine mounts, and that is removing the power steering pump. And the reason for that is, as you can see, it's covered with oil. I have a power steering pump reseal kit, and I plan on resealing the power steering pump. I think I'll make a separate video just on that. Also, I fought with it the entire time during disassembly. Had I been thinking, I should have just taken it off to start with. That said, I have my fluid extractor, which fluid extraction is the way to go because that'll help keep stuff off your floor and off your cardboard. But I'm gonna empty all the as much of the fluid out as I can from this reservoir and the power steering pump, remove the power steering pump. Then we'll get started on some engine mount stuff. With the power steering pump out of the way, there's all kinds of room, it seems. That was just 2 fasteners. It's silly. There's a 10mm fastener on the top of this engine mount that goes to a ground, or a bracket that goes to a ground. There's a 17mm that is a through bolt that goes through this engine mount, and there's 2 14mm here that I'm also going to remove. While I'm here, it's a target of opportunity to remove this front engine brace, which is held on by 3 14mm fasteners. Beneath that is the water pump that I intend to replace. So I will throw on a water pump, also put on a timing belt as well, and get all of this stuff, well, ready for assembly. So I left the old timing belt on here this entire time because, as you can, well, actually may see, it's gotten some oil and some junk on it. And I didn't want to have the new belt getting all cheesed up. And this mount, if I'm not mistaken, is held on by 3 17mm fasteners. You think I don't have tools? But I got tools for days. You are going down. In a way that I did not want you to go down. Holy crap. Unfortunate to the max. At least the good news is, if it's good news, is this was definitely broken. We had to go here anyway. It's just easier to get to this bottom one underneath. My plans to replace that water pump are going to be on hold. I'm going to wait to put the new water pump on until after I have resolved that broken bolt issue. I'm going to go for that rear mount next, and to do that, there's a bracket that goes over the top of the top nut, whatever that's going into that. Maybe a little penetrating oil might make it easier for me. It appears that the nuts holding the upper bracket on are 17. Over on the other side of this, there's a through bolt that is a 14 that I'm sure was easy to get to when it was not in the vehicle. In the vehicle, however, well, that's a different story. This might be best had from underneath, and there may also be an electrical connection under there as well. I'm gonna leave you up here camera-wise. And I'm taking this light with me. Just disconnected the electrical connection on the back of it. I don't want to damage it. I'm having a lot of difficulty finding something to get up on that fastener on the end of that engine mount. This has me thinking, maybe I might be better off just removing the entire arm from the side of the engine block, which I can access those fasteners now. There are 3 underneath, and then there's 1 up here. They're all 17mm. I also disconnected the 2 14mm in the back when I was underneath there. There's 1 on this side and 1 on this side that hold it in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove both that 14, and then also this one that holds the top of this bracket to the engine block. The fasteners in this bracket, or the last one down there, is starting to get tight. That says to me that this might be binding up. So I'm going to remove those two 14s in the bottom of the engine mount, and then loosen this 17 up here on the top to try to free it from the engine block. I'm wondering if this is going to be easier if I remove this bracket and remove the top bolt to this engine mount. Maybe that way this whole engine will come up and move around a little bit more, is what I'm hoping for. So I'm gonna try and knock those guys loose now and see if that helps. This one is also 14 millimeter. Is it just me, or did I lift this engine the dumb way? Because I think I lifted it the dumb way. Yeah, I think that's perfect. Lift it up just a wee bit. There's a bracket attached to that. Okay, so if I take that out, all right, it seems that if I remove the crank sensor connector, I can get that up out of there so I can get the stuff. I don't love taking apart things that I thought I put together for the last time, but I suppose that happens. You wouldn't come out before, and now you won't come off at all. I think that'll come out now. Just rip my glove all to shreds. That's what you want to do. Like, I can see whenever, like, just come out. I don't care where the bolts go, just come out. Seriously, stupid. Finally out and on the bench. Truly are a jerk. This bracket, man, the trick was to disconnect it from the crank sensor, which was down in there, that goes into this one. This is the one that holds the fastener, and I believe it sits in there like this. If you have to go here, I advise you don't. I think it's down on there how it's supposed to be. I'd be so happy if one of you just started. God. Just go in to the block. It's simple. The threads are there. I'm spinning you in the correct direction. You need to start threading into the block. Just start. That's all you gotta do, is start. About to just drop my engine on my head and be done with it. What is holding you up? Is it damn bracket? Wires? What? What? Finally. That just leaves the two underneath and tightening them all up. Don't forget the electrical connection. Just disconnected the connector for the front engine mounts. There are two 14 millimeter fasteners there that I think I can get to here. I'll get the other two up front because I think these will be behind the radiator. I think I can get to that from up top. I'm not gonna fight it down here if I don't have to. I've left the four fasteners that hold it to the subframe loose. That way the thing can move around a little bit while I do this other one in the front. I don't want to forget to put this bracket back on, but it does have this little brace fits in there like that. It's going to be on the left side, well, right side, but left side as you're facing it. All the fasteners holding it to the engine block are tight. It's just this. Those 4 that hold it to the subframe that are loose. We've already removed the through bolt for the front one. Now I just need to get the mounting fasteners, of which there are 4. Big tools make 4, less effort. But only if they stay on the fastener. I used to have a light in here. Let's give you something. Ooh. Gives us a little bit anyway. Puts everything I'm working on in darkness, but you know, that plastic bag is super bright. Oh yeah, that one came out nice. This guy is the 9844, and he goes in like this. Also has that electrical connection that faces the driver's side or the left side. Let's see if we can't lower this down and get it back in its home. Okay, in this part of the day, I'm going to be replacing this transmission mount right here. I have supported the transmission with a wood block and a jack, and the front engine mount is still disconnected. And I like this because this will allow the engine to tip like this a little bit more than it would if that mount was still attached. So if you are doing all 4 mounts like I am, you might consider doing it this way, and once you've got the 2 outer mounts replaced, leave the front mount off and then replace the one on the transmission. Here's the engine mount, and given our past experience with this, I think it's a good policy to go with penetrating oil. Oh, nice. That one doesn't look damaged at all. But it comes in a set, so we're replacing it. This one is the 9512. It almost looks like they used a bit of Loctite here, and that makes sense. It keeps like water and other junk from getting in there. So I am actually going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on this before I install it to help keep some of that junk out of there, so that if this ever has to come out again in the future, hopefully it will do so. What is going on here? Like, all the threads and everything were lined up fine. I don't have this in here wrong. Let's go find out what's wrong with this thing. I ran a thread chaser through that top hole. It feels better. When I put this mount in, there's like substantial movement before it's seated onto the side of the transmission. When I take the old mount, there's none. This goes right on. So I'm putting the old mount back on. You saw how the other mount would not do that. I'm gonna say if this mount is not broken, don't mess with it. I suppose it's time to deal with this, and that is the broken bolt for that engine mount. the last engine mount that we're dealing with right now. And I'm going to start with some compressed air to clean the dirt and everything out of there. As you might have already guessed, I think I'm going to try my welder. Others have suggested in the past to start welding on what's left of the fastener first before putting the nut on top of it. That's what I'm going to do. But what I'm going to attempt to do is I'm going to attempt to weld a nut to the top of what's left of this bolt and then hopefully bring the rest of it out. We'll see. Hopefully the heat will help. This is the nut that I've chosen. Maybe. Yes, no, maybe. I honestly don't know what happened here, because if what I think happened, it's a really bad day, because that means that what this was bolting into down inside the frame may have broken loose. And if that's happened, oh man. Oh man. Stay tuned. I've had a think on this, and I believe what I'm gonna do is leave it for now. There's other work to be done on other things, and yesterday I got jammed up and a wrench fell on my ear and it kind of hurt. So I don't want to spend my day just being aggravated again. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot and leave this for another time, because there's other things that need to be done, like this. I'm going to remove this whole rocker assembly along with the spool valve assembly over here, and I'm going to take this whole thing and put it into the ultrasonic cleaner and let it clean. Now, I'm not going to do the inside of the head necessarily. I might clean some of the gunk and stuff out of there, but this is another one of those jobs that needs to be done. I'm going to get started on that now. As far as the rear cylinder head, I don't think I'm going to mess with it at all. Like at all. I don't think I'm going to take the catalytic converter off. I think I'm just going to tighten these fasteners down. I'm going to put this back in the same way it came out. There's not much cleaning or anything to do up here or any of that. No real oil leaks. I think the only thing is, like, this little guy in the timing cover came out a little bit. Boom. Fixed. Let's work on this guy. Experience has taught me, heat this guy up before you put stuff in it. In fact, let's raise the temp a little bit. Let's go to 56. Yeah, let's do dangerously. I found the hotter this is, the better it works. There we go. Something else I just remembered that I promised you, that we would check the sealing of these cylinder heads. So I guess I'm going to do this to both of them. So none of the nuts, all came with studs. It's just how it was. Oh, we're going to make an even bigger mess with you, aren't we? Because there's still puddles of oil down inside of you. Oh, this is going to be fun. Could it be that other 12mm fastener under here? What do you think? I think so. Yeah, that's the guy. Where did I put those fasteners? I'm thinking about it. They all live over here. And here's two 12s. We can add something else to the cleaner. In fact, there's something else I'll throw in too. I think they're all 12s. Traditionally, you want to start the outside and then work your way in. Now Honda actually has a TSB to where you don't have to remove this entire assembly. You can just remove this upper part with these 10mm just to replace this top part, and it solves your oil leak. In fact, my friend did that to his Accord and it works great. But here's my reply to that. You spent $250, $300 on this part. Why are you only installing half of it? And also, another question to Honda, if you're telling me to take this apart and install just half the part that you just sold me or sold a customer, why not just sell the top part? Or better yet, why not sell the gaskets? By the way, all the gaskets that are out there, they're all counterfeit. So the gaskets that you find out there, don't use them. I've already done a video on that. So Honda, why not make the gaskets? Why not just sell the top part if that's your TSB? Instead, you're charging me more. I don't like it. For this piece, we are going to just remove that, because guess what? We don't need it. We have a new one. We spent that money. That seems like it stays on there. Is that gonna leave on me? Because if you are, I wanna know now. In addition to this bracket that was on the cylinder head, this is the power steering bracket. And then these were the bolts that were on the VCM spool valve solenoid assembly, whatever we wanna call it. And it's probably gonna take a while. This guy is dirty. Let's go over to the cylinder head and we'll check that sealing I talked about. Look at what I got. I did race car stuff, so I have these. Which now that I think about it, we'll just go doot, doot. I did say we were gonna make more messes. Oh, where did you come from? That little guy fell out of somewhere. So despite the fact that the inside, where the valves and everything are, look like garbage, this actually looks fairly clean. It doesn't really look that bad to me. I left the spark plugs in because we're going to take a little bit of solvent, a little bit of brake cleaner, and just put it down inside each one of these cylinders. And if the solvent leaks out, then we know we have a leak. If it stays there, it doesn't go anywhere, then we're good. There is a test for this that I have seen on the interwebs that I believe does work. Since this is flammable, you just hold a flame near the openings, and if you see it flame up, then you know it's leaking into that, either an intake or on this side exhaust. You don't need to like fill the entire combustion chamber. Well, viewers, things just got more complicated because look, we got solvent coming into here on the intake side of this cylinder, and this is the front cylinder head, so that would be 4, 5, and 6. So cylinder 5 has some sort of leakage at the intake valve, it looks like. I'm going to spin this around. Yeah, see the other ones, how they're dry? But 5, you can sort of see, you can clearly see that's leaking out. Someone's leaking on this side too, and if I'm going to guess, that's also going to be cylinder number 5. Let's get a light up in there. Yep, cylinder 5. That exhaust valve's leaking. And you can see how 5 has gone down, whereas 4 and 6 have not. In fact, that one's almost empty right now. Those are my leaking valves. The rest of them seem to be okay. On this one, we can see a lot of where our oil was being consumed. This crusty stuff right here, that's oil burning right there, both of those cylinders. And this is cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 3. So 1 and 3 certainly show signs that they were doing stuff. All 4 of these valves are closed. So we're going to try with this one. First, we'll see if there's leakage. If there is leakage, then I'll pull the catalytic converter off. If there's no leakage, then we'll move on to the next one. I'm not seeing that leak at all in this side. I think we can safely say that cylinder number 1 seems to be all right. Just try to soak up as much of this as I can. And if we do find one of these leaking, and it is on the exhaust side, we'll have to take the converter off and we'll be able to see, I believe, it should leave a trail on the inside, similar to what the other cylinder head did. Now we're going to rotate the camshaft so that we can get another set of valves closed. I'm not sure which one's going to be which. Timing doesn't really matter now because there's no cylinders for anything to hit, so we can spin this all we want. Doesn't matter the direction either. There's no timing belt or anything. That might have worked out. That spring tension is on the valves all the time, and the cam pushes against that spring tension. So when you find a place where everything closes, the lobes found their base circle. I don't think any of these are open, although these look teeny bit open. The other ones seem to leak immediately, which I suppose if we're talking about leaks, they would be immediate. Still nothing in that other side. I think this one might pass the smell test too. They look like they're a little bit up to me. So before, I'm gonna try to rotate this a little bit and see if I can clean that up a little bit. Now it's closed. Incidentally, I was just using this 17mm ratchet to do my turning. Last one. Ugh, that's a casting booger there. What's the matter with you, Honda? Look at that. Total casting defect. Honda's an engine company. Shame. Shame. It got cleaner, but I don't think it got any shallower because I specifically filled this one up to where it was just over the spark plug electrode. And it didn't sink to the electrode, so I think we're good. So this cylinder head is good on the inside and the outside. This guy, got a couple of valves I need to address. Not to mention it's dirty. It's so dirty. Speaking of dirty, let's get these cleaning. And I know we're not fully up to temperature yet, but we're getting somewhere. Here comes the noise. I'm wondering if I could just lap these valves in. Not real sure, but I'm gonna remove them, get a look at the seats and see what we're dealing with. To do that, I have Honda's special tool, and what this special tool does, you may be able to see, is this fits just on the outside of the valve. So this is really good for valves that are recessed down inside of cylinder heads. It attaches to my tool like so, and I can use it to compress the spring better. Not your friend if you drop it on the floor. Really, I can't believe I found both of those. And the only reason I found this other one is because I heard the noise. It landed on the lid of a 5-gallon bucket. And I know what it sounds like. Like, that's one of those things you have to like say thank you for, because it's not gonna happen often. You are not wanting to come out. You might see the little tiny pits. That's the leak, I'm pretty sure of it. That's not so pretty, right? Like, I would almost say that the seat is the problem and not the valve, just because of all that crustiness. Magnet. Didn't catch me off guard that time. Oh yeah, that seat. Look how ugly that seat is. It's usually the exhaust valves that get beat up, from my experience. I was not expecting to do a valve job, but it looks like at the very least I'm gonna have to have the seat cut on that particular exhaust valve, but you don't do just one valve, you know? You kind of go through and do them all. I need to think on this. And I thought I'd put that rubber thing back in here. Oh. Yeah. There it is. Today has certainly given me a lot to think about. Welcome back, viewers. For you, I'm sure it's only been a few seconds. For me, it's been a day. I think I'm going to start with dealing with this engine mount issue, or engine mount fastener issue. I've been thinking it through. I think the first thing I'm gonna do is clean everything in here, get the engine covered and completely encased and sequestered from everything that I'm gonna be cutting and welding over here. So I'm gonna get this area cleared out, get a new cover put onto this engine, and get ready to do some cutting and some welding. I have beefed up security on the freshly assembled engine, put a large garbage bag and this fender cover over the outside of it, because there's going to be metal bits flying around and I don't want them getting down inside the engine. So this protection extends all the way down the front of what I just finished. I also taped up the front of where the oil filter housing bolts to the side of the engine block. What I've done in the meantime is I have drawn around the inside of the frame rail where I intend to cut, and then I'm going to bend that out so that I can get access to whatever's happening inside of there. That's the plan. Going to use the new compressor for this. It's got like an inner plate. Going to make a cut a little bit lower. Well, it's obvious that this is spinning, but the bottom part of it is not spinning. That means the two of these things are not connected. So they're broken someplace in between. I'm not sure where. So I'll see what I can do to knock this off of here. Okay, got lucky. All right, well now what? I'm gonna take another stab at the welding. think I did a better job of welding it. And I may go down and heat that nut since I have access to it, or the other end of it. Help. Welcome back, viewers. I had the other smaller camera on when I actually did this, but here it is. What I found interesting is the threads aren't rusting. It's the shank. So what's under the bolt head is what rusted away, and that's where it failed. And that says to me that moisture is getting down above these threads in this hole. I want to try and prevent this from happening again in the future. I think I'm just going to wrap the bolt in grease or something, but I'm pretty proud of this. This was 3 different attempts before I finally got this to work. So what I ended up doing was little welds at a time to build up little mounds of metal until I got it up high enough to where I could put the nut over the top. And as I mentioned, I just filled the whole nut with a weld here in the process, and this is what finally did it. Grateful for that. Now I've got to put this back together, weld this up, clean this out, find a replacement bolt. We'll get the engine mount in, a new water pump installed, and the bracket and everything back here, and that will free us up so we can go over and deal with those valves that are also an issue that I need to contend with. I'd like to mention that I did consider coming through this side of the frame rail. The reason I didn't is clearly right here. The brake line is right in the way, and then the strut is behind it. So where I was looking to go was literally right behind where this brake line is. You can watch this video and see that the inside of this frame rail, there's 2 parts to it. So you want to cut that narrower section. I'll give you a shot of that right now. But what I was thinking about doing when I came in this morning that I just didn't do was I was thinking about drilling a hole in the frame rail and putting my bore scope through it to look inside to see what was behind it. I think that would have been a great idea to let me know that, oh, there is a divider inside there, and it might have given me more information before I went into this. I'm hoping this video gives you that information, but if you're in a situation where it's not this vehicle, it's something else, and you have to make that choice, you might consider drilling a hole, putting a bore scope through there, looking at what you're getting into before you actually start cutting. FYI, these pry bars have an end on them that is made so you can hammer on them. Do you see what I see? That's right. It's an E for Eric the Car Guy. Yeah. Cool, right? This is the old bolt, the one that did not break. This is one that I found. Now, I ran this one down into the hole, but it stops because it doesn't have enough threads, see? So I was thinking, it just needs a few more threads down here. I thought, okay, I could throw a washer on it and it'd be fine. But I'm thinking, okay, next time somebody goes to change the mount, they're going to be confused about the washers and the whole thing could go sideways. So if I just add threads to this, we're good, right? Well, there's a challenge to this. So the bolt that I need to extend the threads on is a 12 by 1.25. So it's 12 millimeter by 1.25 thread pitch. This is my gear wrench tap and die set. This side is SAE, this side is metric. Nowhere in here will you find a 12.125 tap or die. And this is not the only tap and die set I've seen this with. My Max set, it's the exact same thing. No 12 by 125 in the kit whatsoever. And guess what? Just about every Honda stud that's out there is a 12 by 125 stud. So you're gonna need it. I prepared for this problem. I got myself this kit, which is all 12 millimeters. So it's 12 by 1.5, 12 by 125, and 12 by 1. It's also the same with the taps in here. So super happy about that, right? Except, look at these dies. And look at these dies. See how these have that shape like they're a nut, and this is just round? Well, I've looked all over the shop, despite the fact that I have a lot of amazing tools. I have nothing to drive this with. But I'm about to show you something that's jankier than jank, and I think it's going to work. I have a 30 millimeter wrench, and I have the die, and I have this punch, and you might notice that little slot there. If I take this punch and put it right in there, that wedges things so that this thing can't move or turn. So I think I figured out how to do this. Like I said, jankier than jank. Let's throw everything everywhere, make it loud. You want to back it up every so often just to clean the threads. I'm going to clean this off and we'll test it, see if it goes flush. That's going to work. Fits down there flush. Now I'm going to spray the area here with some degreaser because I got some WD-40 on it, and then I'm going to paint it. The paint that I will be using is Eastwood Chassis Black. I kind of love this stuff, and I have some of it, and I really like it. Now let's get back to the issue of these two valves. What am I going to do about it? Well, I talked to a mechanic friend of mine, and his suggestion was to lap the valves and ship it, and that just might be what I would do. Traditionally, you might send this off to a machine shop, have the whole thing hot tanked and cleaned, and you'd ideally do both cylinder heads, and they would do an entire valve job on all of these. It would be probably very expensive or what have you, but valve grinding compound is not, and I believe I will be able to make these seal. If not, well, there I'll go. I also looked into the seat cutting tool for this, and if you want the kit, it's like $2,000, or I think the bare minimum is like $1,000 for that set of tools that could cut these seats, which a machine shop would have. Anyway, I'm done talking about it. I'm going to clean this cylinder head up, and well, we're going to see if we can lap these valves in and get them to seal. These are what the seats look like before doing any work. This is what the intake valve looks like. This is what the exhaust valve looks like. I just had a thought before I go too far down this rabbit hole, and that is, I should probably check to see if these valves are straight. The best way to do that is to roll them on a table just like I am now. If they're not straight, they'll wobble. This guy doesn't look like it has any wobble. Let's try the exhaust valve. And it looks pretty straight also. Just gonna do an initial cleaning of stuff. I think I'm gonna change my mind and do the intake first, because I feel like this is a better angle than this. Just taking a scrubby, and I want to just clean the stem because I don't want to hurt the valve seal if I can help it. Also, just, you know, I can clean the valve a little. Why not? Right here. I'm going to try to keep this away from the cylinder head though, because these little things come off of here as you use them. I might just remove this cover altogether. That was a 17 millimeter. This one is, or these are 12. Gives us access to that cam seal, which looks fine, doesn't look like it's leaking at all. Which I'm happy for, because the parts list is long. And on the other side of this is your cam sensor. Probably taking a signal from those bumps. So see all these bumps, how they're staggered? Those indicate to the computer every time they pass past this sensor what position the camshaft is in. Valve grinding compound, it comes in many shapes and sizes, and it also comes in other grits too, I should mention. So there's a fine grit and there's other grits. This is what I have at the moment. I had some other stuff, but it's been sitting around for a while and it's gotten really watery, and I have my doubts as to whether or not I have enough. I just have these two valves. But it's important to know that this stuff is meant to grind metal. If it ends up inside the engine, it's gonna grind metal and not where you want it to. So this afterwards is going to require a lot of cleaning to try to, and a lot of care to try to keep this stuff out of the rest of the engine. That should be more than enough. See how sparkly it is? That's the stuff that's going to go in and grind stuff. It's called grinding compound, and that's exactly what it's about to do. And we'll take this suction cup tool, but this, like you're starting a fire. So don't just stay on one spot, just spin it a little bit, spin it a little more. Well, let's give that a little clean. I wasn't as worried about the valve, so I'm just gonna set the valve aside and just sort of wipe it off the valve seat for now, just to see how progress is going there. It's important to note what you're grinding, and as you grind, you'll notice it'll be like a gray line, not shiny. And in fact, when you're done and it's good, you'll see a nice clean gray line. Well, I'm gonna do a little more. There's just a little bit of an area in here that I'm concerned about, but otherwise I'm seeing that gray line that I'm looking for. And you push down a little bit as you're doing this. I have 2 gloves because I forgot to take this one off when I took the pulley off. Just now realizing that. There's just a couple of spots, like teeny tiny spots. I'm being maybe rather particular, maybe not. Let's check the valve side. Oh, heck yeah. Let's turn this bus around. Get this exhaust valve done. I'm keeping the valve grinding rags separate from everybody else. I'm not even gonna look at this one for a while. I'm gonna work on this for a minute. I'm about to break the internet because I just came up with something. This particular tool, the suction cups slide off the ends, thankfully, and I've managed to fit it on the end of a 1/4 inch extension, and I fit it inside of my drill. Yeah, there's still some marks, but I think one more good pass like that, we'll have it. I think I'm ready to try it. I don't think that requires any more. That's right. I have more than one set of cylinder head stands. So far, so good. Other side is also dry. No leakage. We fixed it. That solves 2 major issues. Super happy. Now we've got the frame rail. We can bolt the engine mount in. That is awesome. Seems that our cylinder head is now sealing up on all combustion chambers. Also awesome. The next thing I think I'm gonna do is clean this guy up and get it all ready to install. And honestly, that seems like boring video, so I'm gonna focus on that. And once we get that all together, I think there's only one more challenge with the exhaust. As I was removing it, you might remember like the catalytic converter sort of came down and the mount that it was on. I might need to weld a flange onto that, not sure yet. But first, let's get the rest of the engine back together. But I think it's just a matter of putting stuff back together at this point after I get this guy cleaned up, because there are no more issues or things we're fixing, I don't think. We've covered a lot. Anyhow, back to it. It has been a busy morning for me, but a productive one, and I'm going to share with you what I did. Let's start with the valve covers. I went through and replaced all of the grommets on all of the bolts for the valve covers. I also replaced all of the spark plug well seals. Now, on the front one, the back one was pretty much fine, but on the front one, these 2 in particular, right here, those had some sort of corrosion or something in here, and I believe somebody mentioned in the comments somewhere, they work at Honda, and they said that these valve covers are magnesium, and they have been an issue. And they just start leaking, and that may be what I'm looking at here, or the beginnings of it with this. I don't think it was the parts cleaner that did that, or the ultrasonic parts cleaner, I should say, because that's what I put these in. But you're gonna love this. I painted them both, and I did this a while ago, and I know they look really bad and different, but I don't really care. They're gonna be under an engine cover. They look better than they did in my mind. But obviously the back cover got the better paint job, but the front cover, you'll like that, I think. Also on the front cover, besides that cool paint job, that is a brand new PCV valve that is installed right there. While I was working, the head bolts took a dip in the ultrasonic cleaner, and just so long as we're on the subject of head bolts, I went through the specs for these. These are actually torque to yield bolts, but they can be reused. And the spec is this: 11.3 millimeters. This is important, and it took me a minute to figure this out, but it is written this way in the TSB. When you do this 11.3 measurement, know that when you first put it on, at least with my gauge, it has these areas are beveled down to a sharper edge. they will go right between the threads, and you'll think to yourself, oh man, these bolts aren't good. No, you need to go all the way up within the jaws up in that area. So what you're looking for is anything less than 11.3. And if you see something less than 11.3, and they give you like 45 millimeters from the end and then I think 50 millimeters from the end. But I'm hoping that you can see that if I go down the length of this, there's nothing less than 11.3. And the rest are like this as well. That's a really long way of saying I'm going to reuse these head bolts, and I can because they are within spec. I did this on a separate day, not this morning, and I shot a video about resealing this power steering pump. You might remember it was covered with junk, but know that I went through and put in a reseal kit, which there's the part number for the reseal kit. I bought 2 of these kits because the one on my Odyssey is also leaking. Over on this workbench, it's been kind of a staging area for stuff. This is the transfer tube that goes between the back of the water pump and the manifold on the back side of the cylinder heads. I have replaced the O-rings for that. This is a new thermostat, which is one of the first things I'm going to do today, but that's the part number for that guy there. Over here, you may have seen the video that I did on resealing the oil pump on this engine. I've left the oil filter housing off until I've got the timing belt cover and everything else on there. That way I don't have to worry about any of this, because you might remember when I removed it, this was very much in the way of one of those fasteners. Inside the engine compartment, I pretty much left things alone after painting the frame rail and everything, which is where I believe that I left you. I came back since then, and I have cleaned the back side of this manifold and gotten this all ready for reassembly. I did remove this other upper radiator hose attachment, and I was very glad that I did, because it's just so much easier to move this thing around. And considering the amount that you have to move this around during this whole process, I do recommend that you remove both of the large hoses from it at the very least. I don't know what I'm going to do about the alternator. I was originally intent on removing it and cleaning it up and going in and looking at the brushes and everything else. But then I just kind of ran out of time. This is where I've done the bulk of my work this morning. I went through and did valve adjustments on both cylinder heads. I also reassembled the front cylinder head, which you'll notice that upper rail is so much cleaner. Well, that went through the ultrasonic cleaner, and that's why it looks as good as it does now. The inside of this cylinder head, well, doesn't look as great, but it did get its valve adjustment. It also got a brand new spool valve, so that's on there and ready to go. I also cleaned, I believe, the mating surfaces on the side of the cylinder head so that that can accept the manifolds. With the catalytic converters, they had some loose shields, you might remember. So what I did was I just put these hose clamps on here to help prevent this from rattling around or coming any looser. I ran some thread chasers down the threads of these studs for the converters. I also have new nuts here at the ready. I got a whole stock of these things from a power steering hose recall that we had years ago on Acura TLs. So I literally have these en masse, and I was happy to have them because you might remember that these were all disintegrated. I did the same thing over here, except for this one got a clamp around the entire circumference, and I also got some new fasteners for the EGR tube, which is sitting right here. So that's what goes here. Here's something of note as far as doing a valve adjustment with the cylinder heads off of the vehicle. And that is for the rear cylinder head. If you're doing this in the vehicle, you do everything off the front cylinder head cam sprocket, because each one of the cylinders is marked, and there's a window in the outside of the timing cover that each one of the cylinders, when it's ready to have its valve adjusted, will come up in that location. Well, it's pretty easy to figure out here, and there's a mark right here on the side of the back of this head cover. And you line everything up and do the valve adjustment on that cylinder. But there's no such marks on the rear cylinder head other than cylinder number 1, which is where you set it when you're setting the timing belt. I did notice, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. There's 6 of these spokes around the outside. There's 6 cylinders. They're likely, very, very likely, evenly spaced. Unlike the front head, this has a cam sensor. So there's a sensor behind here, so that's why this has a different shape. It doesn't have that back here, but it does have these 6 spokes, which, as I said, are evenly spaced. So all I had to do was go from cylinder number 1, cylinder number 2, or 3, and then 2, as far as the way I had it set up in here, and I just spun it around and did the valve adjustment that way. But that may be helpful to you. And you might have also noticed that I used a little bit of my favorite Loctite 518, I believe, sealer instead of Honda Bond for this. I think I mentioned I was going to attack the thermostat here. Oh, and of course there's still some coolant in there. All right, well, knowing that, I'm going to get something for that to go into. This might work. It's ugly, but I think it will contain a mess. It kind of feels like I oversold that. Sorry. This is the part number for the new thermostat. Comes with a gasket. There is the little bleeder valve here at the top, and there's a little bump on the top of the gasket. You line those two up. And there we are. The way this fits in, that bump on the top, there's a bump on the top of the housing. It'll fit right in there. And I don't recommend any other thermostat besides an original equipment thermostat. Yes, that throttle body is ugly. I'm trying not to move the throttle blade. I just want to clean the gunk off. And this is throttle body cleaner. I figured it was right for the job. And when I remove this, everything is gonna hopefully go towards the front and away from stuff. Hello, engine. I see that you've corroded while I've left you. It's okay, I forgive you. I think I should replace this water pump now. It seems super accessible. I'm glad I left a tape on the front of that oil pump there, because there's still apparently some water in that block. You could probably see exactly where that pass-through goes, that transfer pipe. It goes right through here from the back of the water pump. I don't think I called it out, but these are 10mm fasteners. And I'm just going about a quarter turn past tight. And as much of a crisscross pattern as I can manage with these. This idler was on here before. I took some compressed air and blew all the water and moisture off the front of the engine. This is the part number for the timing belt. I'm going to take this timing belt and put it in here. I believe, yeah, it goes around like that. Up there. Because I think once I put this other piece in here, it's going to be trapped. My mistake is the timing belt has to go in between the water pump and that idler pulley with a loop in it just like that, so we can get that around the front cam on the cylinder head. So that's how it has to be on there. Now, I won't have to pull that thing back out, I hope. Here is the part number for that side engine mount. Here is the result of my greasing. That was a lot of effort. Why does it look like that engine needs to go down? Well, given my experience with that other engine mount, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out and compare it to the old mount. Here are the new and old mount, so new, old. They're a little different, I think. Maybe not. If these are not different, then what is different? Those. So if those inside the pilot are sitting up higher, they're going to make the engine sit up higher. I really don't want to go back and change those. I need to think about this. Looks like it sits up in here higher with this one also. But my fear is, if I run this down, I am shoving that engine down. And that's going to put stress on all the mounts. And if I run that down like it is, because there's nothing under here. Nothing. I'm not supporting it with any floor jacks, anything. There's no reason that that should be up like that. The only thing I could think that would cause it is that mount and that mount. Well, viewers, I am to a place to where I'm saying I'm just going to put the old mounts back in because I want to be able to have this engine and everything running. Today better be the day is all I've got to say. And that is for this Pilot to run. I've done all the little work on the side and the extra work on the side because the engine mounts, that really sucked to have to go back and do that. But that's all done. The old engine mounts are back in. Everything is level like it was before. That part's taken care of. I took some time to rebuild my catalytic converter. Now, I looked into it. I could have replaced it for 80 bucks. I had a couple of flanges that were lying around that were not being used. So I thought, well, if I could piece together these flanges and possibly make a new flange, which is what I did. I Frankensteined the whole thing. I even went so far as to cut some bolts and create some new studs so that those were all the same. I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any issues with that. Catalytic converter, well, those are a wear item, frankly, and eventually will wear out considering the mileage on this. This one should be worn out. But if the check engine light is not on for the converter, I'm good with it. I have new gaskets already set aside. And in fact, I will go over those gaskets and everything when we get to that part of the assembly. But the valves are fixed. The power steering pump has been resealed. The oil pump has been resealed. O-rings have been installed. There's no reason why it shouldn't run today. And I'm going to start by reassembling the engine. I'm going to put that last engine mount, tighten that thing down, and get that all ready to accept the rear cylinder head. That's where I'm going to go next. So let's start doing that right now. Let's get this thing running. This has been sitting for a while, so I think it'd be a good idea to turn the engine over and make sure I've got each one of the cylinders at least with some WD-40 in it. Some type of lubricant on the cylinder walls so that things aren't starting up completely dry. I do intend to crank the engine and build oil pressure before I start, but that's not going to get too much oil inside the cylinder itself. And given that we're trying to break in some brand new rings, I want to give them the best chance possible. Actually, I think I'm going to come in here with my vacuum cleaner and get the little chunks of stuff out real quick first. I'll put the crank bolt back in, hit each one of the cylinders with some stuff, WD-40 most likely, and get everything back to top dead center so that it's easy. I don't want so much liquid in there that I lock things up. But I do want enough liquid in there where things are not starting up and operating completely dry. So there's your timing marks. The one on the block and the one on the sprocket. Sprocket, block. Line those two things up. I remove these dowels just to keep them safe from damage. Also, make cleaning cylinder head and that other stuff a little bit easier. Now it's time to install a head gasket, and I'm going to start with the rear cylinder head, do exactly what I did when I removed it, and just install it with the catalytic converter and everything else. I want to figure out which head gasket is which, so I'm going to try it with the old head gaskets, and then I'll grab the new one. I think that's the rear head gasket. And I think also there's a tag with a part number. I think you want the part number to face up when it's installed. Unless I miss my guess, and I don't think I am, that is the part number for the rear cylinder head gasket. Here is another tip I want to give you. Don't manhandle these gasket packages open. This is an MLS gasket. It's multi-layer steel. If you bend it, that's not good. So what I've gotten in the habit of doing is just cutting open my gaskets with a pair of scissors. I find that to be very non-destructive and an easy way of removing gaskets. The numbers, part number, should be facing upward when you install the gasket. And because we put our dowels in there, that's going to keep our head gasket just where it needs to be while we go grab that cylinder head. Wow, it's weird that we're at this point. First, I'm taking one last look around to make sure that there's no apparent obstructions. So when I set this down here, obviously I'm going to be focused on it. I'm going to try and like eyeball this side of the cylinder head and just sort of try to guide it down onto the dowels. That seemed to go right into place. One last look around, make sure it's all installed correctly and lined up. I mean, it went down on the dowels. That should be enough. There are 8 head bolts. I believe I covered the measurements of this earlier. They're also all the same length. I'm gonna snug these up, starting with the center outward, and I'm only snugging them for now. They're 14 millimeter 12 point. I'm starting at the top also because the cylinder head is actually sitting up a little bit here in the front, and I want to correct that. Now to torque them. The torque spec is as follows. It's 22 foot-pounds or 29 Newton meters, followed by 2 90-degree turns. So similar to what we did on the connecting rod bolts, it's similar here. So I'm going to take these all to 22, starting with the center and spiraling my way out. I'm also trying to make it so that I've got a clean sweep to the final torque. I'm going to switch to my bigger wrench to do the 90s and 90s, but I did notice when I went back around and checked that the middle ones got loose. So I would go around and make sure they're all at 22 before you start, because from here it's just angle. There's really no way of verifying the torque after that point, so you're kind of stuck. Okay, let's hope this guy is set up the way I need it to be. So I'm not seeing the angle. I don't trust you. I think I have the wrench set up correctly. It better be. It's not. Damn it. Yeah, you, I'm afraid, are not working. You don't understand what angle means. It does not mean torque till it breaks. It's 190. All right, so the wrench doesn't start registering anything until it starts getting at least up to like a few pound-feet of torque, I guess. I hate angle torquing. I thought I'd like it more with a digital torque wrench. I do not. If I'm looking at an angle, I'm starting right now, almost even with the head. So when I get up to about here, it should be good. Okay, I guess it is. You can't tell me that's 90 degrees. You can't frickin' tell me that. It was like 180 degrees. What the heck, man? Okay, going for a second 90 degrees. It's nice that you told me to stop. Just when I'm about to stop. Oh, now you got an error. This would be a lot better if I could use the longer frickin' wrench. Okay, I'm gonna call that cylinder head installed. Let's do it again. Now with this one, I don't have the converter attached to the cylinder head. I believe that is the part number for the front cylinder head, right there. Oh, come on, are you angling anything? Oh, I hated this. Frickin' hate it. I need you to register the frickin' angle. And I need you to tell me when I'm at 90 degrees, not when I'm at like 140 degrees, when I'm at 90 degrees, all right? So let's do this. Okay. Thank you for giving me a correct reading. Why are you not showing angles? Damn you! Why do you wait till I've turned this thing like 3 times before you start showing angles, you piece of shit? Not even registering! Come on! I think I've calmed down. Probably not. I'm just furious that these quote-unquote torque wrenches that are giving me angles don't start the angle. See, here's the problem. I got no room in here, and I got to use the short one. And the short one means I'm going to have a hard time twisting it because it's short. And also, it doesn't seem to like to go above its rated torque rating or whatever it is. I don't know what its frickin' problem is, but it's causing me problems and it's making me furious. So I'm about done with this car, with this job, with this everything at the moment, because I've been giving it my all, and when your tools let you down, you got nothing. You literally have nothing because you're standing there. If you can't turn a bolt, if you can't torque a bolt, you can't do anything because you're not doing anything. So here I am, starting over. Okay. Hopefully you get the memo this time and you actually work. You have brand new batteries. I'm using you correctly. I've read the instructions several times. Give me 22 foot-pounds. Great. I need you to start counting off angles. You're not counting off angles! What the f*** is your problem? Angles! Angles! You are so inconsistent. 68 foot-pounds, 84 foot-pounds. You're supposed to be doing angles. You're not supposed to be putting the torque all over the place because that's just stupid. This is the most jank-ass torque job I think I've ever done in my whole life. That was an exercise in keeping my cool, which I failed. I'm just gonna get this manifold on here. This is the front gasket. This is the one for the back. I put a little silicone on these also and try to clean the place where they live. It appears I put the thermostat housing on backwards. It wasn't going back together. Okay, I think I'm gonna do a timing belt next. No, the timing belt's not on. What I did was I removed all of the head bolts, both front and back. I inspected them again because the whole torquing thing just was janky. I did not trust it. I measured the bolts again. All the bolts measured good. They're all 11.8. So if you're curious if you can reuse these bolts, I've had them loose and tight many times. You probably can. Anyway, they were all well within spec. I'm a little tired now, but I just went through and retorqued everything, and I learned something about my torque wrench and as far as the angle setting and things go that I'm going to share with you now that I'm hoping is helpful. You might also see my paint marks. Those are my 3 levels of torque. So the black one is the first 22 foot-pounds, which actually ended up being 25, which we'll talk about in a minute. The yellow one is the first 90 degrees, and the pink one is the third 90 degrees, and both cylinder heads have said marking, so I know that each bolt is torqued. This is what I learned about my torque wrenches that I'm going to share with you now. This is obviously the smaller torque wrench. This is the 3/8 torque wrench. The spec calls for 22 foot-pounds to start with. 29 newton meters maybe, I don't know. That's what it calls for to start with. The lowest this one goes down is 25 foot-pounds. What I discovered when using this one, there were times when I was trying to get the angle and I thought I was just towards the end and it would just go red, flash, and the screen would just go dark, and that was it. So this thing gave up mid-angle more than once. Very frustrating. It seems to me the reason for this, since I did not have the problem with the 1/2-inch torque wrench, is because I was using this beyond its maximum. Once it went over whatever it's rated for, like maybe 100 pounds feet or something like that, I don't know. Once it goes over that, it freaks out, so angle or not. What I discovered is if I use my 1/2-inch torque wrench, which lowest setting on this is 25 foot-pounds, only 3 pound-feet different. You know what, with these angles, looking at a digital torque reading afterwards, there was a variance of 15 to 20 pound-feet between bolts. So I don't really care about 3 pound-feet between torque wrenches. Anyhow, set this one to 25 pound-feet, managed to swing it around in there, and this one didn't have any issues. So what happens is it won't start reading an angle until it reaches the torque. That's the issue. So I had to set this one. I was at 22 pound-feet, and then it would start to read the angle. This one I set at 25. After 25, it started to read the angle. So in other words, you have to set it on the lowest torque you can, or the torque that is the base torque for the degree or whatever it is. It won't start doing the angle until after that torque. These digital ones do. These are gear wrench ones. I don't know about other torque wrenches, anything like that. I wish there was like a button push. I tried that. I tried hitting like set on here to get it to start. It wouldn't do it until it reached that specified torque, and then it would start to show degrees. This was maddening. This cost me my afternoon. This is why this isn't running right now. But I'm sharing this information with you now to save you that frustration, because that's what I do. You're welcome. I think before I get too far into this, I can really see the bracket for the alternator right now. Because I think once I get the timing cover stuff in place, this will not seem as accessible. Everything is in time, but the slack is on the wrong side. The slack should be over here. So I just need to reposition it on the crank, I think. That looks better. Okay. We'll go around and check all the marks. Looks like that one's lined up. Looks like this back one's lined up. Looks like we are also lined up on the front one. The other important thing about this is that everything has a little bit of tension except for this back one, which I call the slack side of the belt because it's on the tensioner side. That is the way it should be. Now I am reusing, I don't think it's really that old of a tensioner. I don't think that the timing belt on this was changed too long ago, although they were aftermarket parts. But I was able to put this in a vise and push this back in, and I had this pin. You can easily use a drill bit for this that fits into this hole to reuse the tensioner if you want. It's probably a good idea to replace it if you're replacing a belt and doing all of this other stuff that, as I mentioned. So I don't feel a need to replace this tensioner. And if you're slow when you use the vise, when you draw it back in, that's the key. If you do it fast, you could break the tensioner and oil comes out. If you see oil leaking out of this, definitely replace it. Assembly's in place, one final check and pull the grenade. There we go. Then I got tension everywhere. Life is good. I'm gonna start installing the covers. Do not forget about this one. That one's important. Seems much easier to get up in here without this oil filter housing thing in the way, right? Looks like I forgot one. That is the part number for that gasket. All ready to go. I have a new oil filter also, but I just discovered that I have no oil for this. I'm gonna have to go and get oil before we can start it up. There were 3 of these. One of them was longer, and that one's that one. So the longer one goes in here. Looks like it had a little dab of Honda Bond on it. So I'm gonna go get some Honda Bond to put on the threads of that long one. The other 2 don't, they go into blind holes. I don't think they matter at all. But this one might seal the back of the oil pump, I'm not sure. I'm just gonna use more 518 on the threads, because I can. So it's this one up top here. I'll put the torque on the screen. I don't think this is that much. I purchased a tensioner slash belt kit. There's your part number. I wasn't as worried about this being aftermarket because it's on the outside. I don't know. I was trying to save some money. I'm not sure why, but the new one comes with an extra pulley. Can't figure out where it goes. And these pulleys seem to all be the same size, so I'm just gonna leave it. One last thing that I like to do with aftermarket parts, I wanna make sure the fasteners are the same size as original, because that messes me up. Like when they take a 12 millimeter, turn it into a 13 millimeter. If that's the case, I just swap over the old fasteners. These seem to be the same, so moving on. Doesn't matter if the engine moves now. Everything's in time. Get these brackets back. I have the anti-seize out, so I'm just gonna put a little bit on that bolt in case it ever needs to come out again. Yeah, that's the front one sorted. You might remember this guy. I know I certainly do. Oh, was it like that? Yep. Again, why not? Why not? You might remember the O2 sensor that I just kind of dangled. Job 1, coat the threads with some anti-seize. This helps ensure that it's going to come out again someday, which it may very well have to. The trick to this, since I took it out with the wire still attached, is I don't want to just start screwing it in. I want to unscrew it for a while on the wire first. So we get it twisted up a little bit, going the opposite direction. And then, wait, need to do it just the opposite of what I just did. So turn it counterclockwise for a few turns, insert it, and then hopefully by the time you get to the end, yes, no twisted wires, no nothing. That is the goal. So no twisted wires, none of that stuff. And then I can reattach that clip up in there. There, it's attached there. It's away from the axle. Engine mount, everything is looking awesome. Might be a good time to install that exhaust that I spent so much time repairing. What do you think? I have 2 new gaskets. I also have 2 new gaskets for the mating to these other parts of the pipe up here. New nuts, as you can see. So yeah, welding up this cat was fun. How productive it was, that's hard to say. I had fun playing with my welder. That should be secure. Silicone spray in my hanger. First, I think I want to try to get it on its hanger, which was easy thanks to that silicone spray. If I were to do this again, I would say some high temp RTV on the exhaust gasket might help it stay while you get it installed. Sure hope that gasket's in there. And that there, my friends, was an epic bit of wrenching. It's ready to go. Okay, we got one more thing to do down here. And that is I gotta feed that EGR pipe from the manifold down to here, fasten it to the bottom of this catalytic converter here. That may be all the stuff underneath. Well, most of it anyway. I'm pretty sure I messed up by installing the serpentine belt tensioner without installing the upper timing cover first. So I'm having to backtrack on that real quick. Yep, never would have been able to get to this with the tensioner in the way. Put all the timing covers on before you install the serpentine belt tensioner. Now I can put that tensioner back on. Something I have not done yet, replace the spark plugs. And I kind of waited until now. I don't know why I waited until now. I wanted to wait till last possible minute, I guess, because I wanted to make sure I didn't get stuff in the engine. I don't know. I have no explanation, but right now I'm going to install the new spark plugs, and I'm going to keep the old ones and catalog them as I did previously with the Odyssey, so that we have a comparison, although we did all that cleaning and everything inside the cylinder head, so I'm not sure what kind of information that's going to yield for us. I imagine not a lot. After this, it should be smooth sailing. Attaching brackets and reconnecting connectors and other junk detail work. I just checked the gaps. I put nothing on the threads. This is according to NGK. And also, I'm very careful when I drop them down into the wells. I don't want to bend the electrodes. Don't ask me how I know. And I believe once you get these snug, all you need to do is another quarter turn. Quarter to a half turn, I would say, because I think these are gasketed plugs. Gasketed plugs get a little more of a turn on them than non-gasketed plugs. So snug, quarter, quarter, quarter. Yeah, I would say after they bottom out, do like almost another turn, 3/4 of a turn. I'm not sure I really need to add a whole lot of detail to the reassembly of this part of it. It's just a matter of reconnecting all those connectors that we disconnected during the original video and getting it all back together. I'm going to drizzle some oil over the rocker arms and everything before I put the valve covers on one final time. And also I'm going to do a pre-oiling before I start the engine for the first time, because I want to make sure to get as much lubrication in there as possible. But you might also remember that I don't have the oil, so I'm going to have to run out and get some of that. So I'm going to put you on a time lapse. We're going to get this thing back together and ready to put fluids in it. And I'll see you then. Welcome back, viewers. There's a sight you haven't seen in a minute. Well, I haven't seen it in a minute. You've probably only waited a few seconds, but it's all back together. Now I need to run to the store and get the proper oil, and we'll go from there. I have not installed the VCM 2 eliminator yet. I'm just going to let it run just like a normal pilot for now. It's really easy to install that. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to get it running and make sure that it works. To do that, I need to run to the store and go get some oil. I'll be back and we'll see if we can start this up. Back from the store with my oil, and I'm going to fill the filter and install it. And then I'm going to fill the crankcase. Now, because the oil pan was completely empty, there's often, FYI, about a half a quart or maybe more in your oil pan when you change your oil. So all the oil doesn't come out. In this case, it has all come out because, well, we took the oil pan off and emptied it. So it may require more oil than you're used to adding. So be aware of that. So definitely want to check the oil. Let's do that now. Just generally looking over things that I've installed, sort of trying to remember if I've got everything where it's supposed to be. Because we did take a lot of stuff apart, like pretty much that whole engine. Of course, after doing all that cleaning, I go to put the overflow on, which is this guy right here. And it's still like coolant in it, splashed it all over the engine. That's bang on right now, but we'll check it again after it starts up and runs for a bit. It's also not sitting level, so that is key. So I'm gonna start it up and let it run for sure, but I'm not gonna make the final assessment on the oil level until I've either lifted up the back end or it's on the ground and on a level surface. That's the criteria. For now, I think we got enough oil to run it. Now for coolant. I've already installed the first part of my spill-free funnel, so I'm not just sticking this in there. Looks like I am, but I came prepared. It's Honda coolant. It's what I recommend. I don't hear anything dripping out. That's a good sign. You'll need approximately 2 gallons of coolant to fill the whole system. There's still some left. And that should go in the overflow. Like I'll need a little more. So maybe 2.5. We're not done yet, because I also rebuilt the power steering pump. So we want to be sure to fill that guy up too. Well, that fender cover doesn't want to stay. So it doesn't have to. Just gonna leave it there for the moment. It's probably gonna empty out quick, but it won't be empty. I don't want to start this guy up dry. So my intention here is to plug into the scan tool and do the compression test or cranking compression test, which turns off all of the injectors. It's designed to basically check the compression of the engine, and it turns everything important off so that you can so that it can get you some general compression readings. So I'm gonna set it up for a cranking compression test. I've pulled up the cranking compression test. I did not want that to start. What is your problem? Yes, engine speed indicates 0 RPM. Of course it does, because it's not doing what I told you to do. I told you to do a cranking compression test. Stop it. Just stop it. Like, do what you did before. What is your problem? How come you're not? Fuel pump off. Fuel pump off. Just turn the fuel pump off. I mean, all this stuff is set up to where I have to reset the ECU for this to even work. So why it's even starting is beyond me, because it's disabled all of that, or it's supposed to disable all of that. So I don't know what its frickin' problem is. Yes, I wish to continue. Manually stop the fuel pump. Fuel pump off. That's not off. It can't run. Oh man, what is, Okay, I'm stopping the fuel pump. Fuel pump off. 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 Stop it! I believe I finally have what I want, which is I've turned all the injectors off. This is all the injectors are stopped. So all the injectors should not be firing. I should be able to crank this, build oil pressure, just like I wanted to, without starting the engine. One more of those. Okay, now I have to reset the ECU, which is what I should have had to do in order for this to even... It's so aggravating when the tools don't work, when the parts don't work. Like, you're doing everything you can, but the stuff is just letting you down. And I don't know if it's because of my unfamiliarity with this tool, but I used this exact same tool to disable injectors and everything before, and now that I want them disabled, it's not disabling them. Very frustrating. PCM has been reset. We should be good to go to start. So we're doing that now. For real this time, we're actually starting it. No oil pressure light, no noise, no check engine light. ABS light's on, but that's the ABS light, not the check engine light. Seems to be running pretty smooth. I don't even hear any power steering noise, which I'm gonna have to top that off because that's low right now. Now we'll bring it up to temperature. Well, first I'm gonna top off the power steering. Then I'm gonna bring it up to temperature and we'll bleed this cooling system out. I don't hear any exhaust leaks either, which is also a good sign. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna raise the engine RPM to about 2,500. And I want the heater to be on, but I want the fan to be off. And I'll just do this for a bit to circulate the coolant through the system. Hopefully purge any air that's in there. I have to say it's running pretty smoothly. That's encouraging. No loud banging noises. That's always a good thing after you've done a bunch of work. Whatever's causing this ABS light to come on, it's got to be like on right now. I don't recall that being on before. Okay, I've got heat out my vents. So I'm going to say that the coolant is circulated through the system. This says my ECU failed. So permanent DTC for the ABS modulator says voltage is low. Maybe I left it unplugged or something. That smoke that you see is normal. When you take all that stuff apart, you got grease on stuff, exhaust, all that kind of thing. It's going to need a minute to burn off. I just cleared the ABS codes. We're good. The only thing it's on is a maintenance light, which I'm about to turn off. And a tire pressure monitor light. Well, those aren't even on the car right now, so I'm not too worried about it. We can sort that out in a minute, but ABS light's gone. That's good. I just reset all the maintenance stuff, which was 1 and 2, and reset the oil life because it had a B12 service. So right now, the only thing it's on is a TPMS light, seat belt, and my door's open. We know why those are on. I think I did a good job considering. Just looking around, listening, looking for leaks, listening for leaks. And I do hear a little bit of an exhaust leak coming from here. I had nothing to do with that other than I moved it. But I don't hear anything back here by the converter at all. So nothing back in this area. But I do a little bit in this flex pipe. I'm gonna have to track one of those down at some point. It's very quiet, very smooth. Like new piston rings should be, I suppose. I think that's a good start. I'm gonna get this all back together and running and driving and all that kind of thing, and we'll circle back and we'll close out the video then. How about that? Well, viewers, that was certainly an epic journey now, wasn't it? And I hope it was entertaining and educational, as I hope all of my videos are. But there are a few things that I want to cover before I close this one out, and I feel that these things are important. So I wrote them down over here so that I would remember. And I think first and foremost, we should talk about the engine mounts. The engine mounts, I figured, were a great target of opportunity without the cylinder heads in the way. I figured it'd be real easy to get to that rear mount, and that rear mount is the problem. The front mount, you can fight with that one a little bit, but the one you're really gonna fight with is that rear mount. So if you ever have to replace that, I feel for you. The first mount that I tried to replace was that transmission mount. And when I had trouble with that, I actually reached out to Anker, my contact at Anker, and said, look, this is the trouble I'm having. Here's a video of what's going on. Did I give you the wrong information? Did you send me the wrong part? You know, is there something going on here? It's not working. Unfortunately, there's been radio silence with Anker from that time. And I reached out to them after I had trouble with the other mounts as well. So I've gotten nothing from them on that. But I did verify that those mounts were the problem. I put them on the bench and I put my level on them to compare them to the original equipment mounts. And you can clearly see how they sit up higher than the original equipment mounts. So I am 100% positive that those aftermarket mounts are what caused the engine to sit up too high. And if I would have tightened everything down then, everything would have been under stress. Every mount in that vehicle would have been under stress, and it probably would have vibrated more. On top of that, you probably noticed the difficulty I had just trying to install that rear mount, and I suspect that that's because it was sitting in a different position. If it's a ½ inch higher than the original equipment thing, it's not going to go in like the original equipment one came out. So there may be a lesson here for you, and that is you may not want to spend Honda money, but you're probably better off spending Honda money, especially if it's something difficult to replace like that rear engine mount. So I'm sorry to give you that information, but believe me, you'd rather know now before fighting with it later. And speaking of aftermarket parts, the other thing that I fought with, which happened during that whole time-lapse bit, was I also got an aftermarket serpentine belt tensioner and belt that I wanted to install. Well, I had difficulty. Now, when I tried to set the tension on it after installing it, I was trying to take the belt and put it on the power steering pump. I was trying to set the tension, and every time I tried to do that, the bolt would loosen. So the bolt on the tensioner would loosen and just spin, and it wouldn't stay in one spot, and therefore I couldn't move the thing to set the tension. So the old one went back in. By the way, I've been driving this thing for about 2 weeks since I put it back together, and it's actually doing pretty well, although I have not installed the VCM eliminator. Well, I just installed the VCM eliminator this morning, but driving it around with VCM was annoying. I see what you people are on about. In this one, it's really bad. So with the new piston rings and all that, it bumps, it shakes, it does dumb things. So I'm very happy to eliminate the VCM, which, by the way, we're going to cover more of that later. I'll talk about that more towards the end. The serpentine belt tensioner. So this morning I came in and I tried to demonstrate the problem that I was having because I want to put that on camera. I want to show you. If it's not on camera, it didn't happen, right? So I put in a device and I tried to show exactly what was happening inside the vehicle. And guess what? Worked every stinking time. Every stinking time. So I said, you know what? You're going in now. So I installed that new serpentine belt tensioner and that new serpentine belt. And I had trouble doing it because I had to fight with it a little bit, but it's in there now. Here's one more thing on that serpentine belt that I think you might find useful. I use this offset wrench. It's a 0 offset wrench. It's a 14-12 snap-on 0 offset. If you work on Hondas, I strongly recommend you get one of these and the 17 and 19 that goes with it. But this is what I use to move that tensioner on the serpentine belt. What I found out is if I take, I think this is a 1-foot extension and this is a 20 millimeter socket. Now, it could be a different size socket for you, I'm not sure, but the idea is for the end of the wrench to be able to be fully immersed in that deep well socket. And this gives you extra leverage, like a lot of extra leverage, like so much leverage I can't even get into the frame. So that much leverage makes changing that serpentine belt a lot easier. So no special tool, anything. You could just have this stuff in your box, aside from this guy, which this guy you'll find useful for other stuff also. I think we need to talk about the scan tool stuff that I ran into there towards the end also. At first, I tried to do the cranking compression test, which is what I did with this before I even disassembled it. I did the cranking compression test, which I believe disables the injectors and allows you to crank the engine without it actually starting. In fact, after doing that, you have to go back in and reset the computer just so that it can work again. So this is another part of my frustration here. The next thing I tried was turning off the fuel pump. So I went in and found where I could turn off the fuel pump with the scan tool, turn off fuel pump, and it started, as you saw. So super frustrated with that. Last thing I tried was turning off all the injectors, and that was the one thing that was successful. The reason why this was so important to me was because all of that effort and everything is wasted if you start it up without oil in it, because the oil is actually a cushion between all those metal parts, and those metal parts never really touch. There's a thin film of oil between all the connecting rod bearings and everything else so that they never actually touch, because if they touch, they can wear. So I wanted to make sure that I primed that engine up and had it cranking and had all that oil moving through the engine. You might also remember that I had the oil pump off and there was no oil in that. I packed it full of grease and everything to hopefully help draw stuff up in, which it eventually did. Point was, is that oiling system was empty. And starting an engine up with an empty oiling system, in my mind, is just asking for trouble. So hence the reason for my extreme frustration in that situation. If I was going to do this again, what I would recommend doing is unplugging all the coil packs. That way there's a hard fault. That way there's no way that engine's going to start, and you'll be able to crank it. Now, if the fuel injectors are still working, they could wash the cylinder walls down with fuel while you're doing this and create a whole other problem. That's the rub. So maybe pull a fuel pump fuse, like physically pull it. Maybe I should have done that instead of trying to do it with a scan tool, as well as disconnecting those coil packs. I think that might be the way to go, because again, it's extremely important to crank that engine before starting it so that you get oil pressure moved throughout that system so that it's not starting up dry, because you do not want that. So I came up with a couple of theories for why it might have started even though I was turning off fuel, or at least thought I was turning off fuel. So I came in this morning and I did an experiment. I took some WD-40 and I sprayed it on the bench and I tried to light it with a lighter. It would not light. And the reason why I did that is, you might remember that I lubricated the cylinder walls and everything with WD-40, and that's what I thought was, maybe the combustible material inside that cylinder, and maybe that's why the engine was starting. It was running on WD-40, not fuel. But from what I saw with my experiment, WD-40 doesn't seem combustible enough to be a fuel. So again, I don't know. I don't know if it was because it was starting for the first time and the computer was insisting on starting the engine, or I don't know. But as I said, you might want to go through and do mechanical disabling of your fuel pump and your ignition system if you're in the same situation. I think that covers all of it. You've got a couple of other videos. You've got one where I rebuilt the power steering pump. You've got another one where I went through and resealed the oil pump on the front of this engine as well. I made those as separate videos that broke out from this. Additionally, as I mentioned, there will be links to TSBs, parts, tools, stuff all down in the description, so check there for more information, including the chapter markers if you want to go back and reference a certain part of the video. If you have automotive questions outside of all this, I ask that you head to EricTheCarGuy.com, also linked in the description. I really appreciate you sticking with me through this whole project that I've been doing with this, and there will be more videos on this in the future. We're going to go back, we'll check the compression readings and all that, and we will have a final VCM video to talk about my conclusions with this experiment once it's been concluded. Until then, I want to tell you to be safe, have fun, and stay dirty, and I will definitely see you next time.